This identification is on the Holocaust and Anne Frank, one of the most famous people in relation to the Holocaust. She is famous for her experiences through the Holocaust, and she's what they call primary evidence. She Historians and many other people have been able to read her diary written in her own words instead of just some historian writing about the Holocaust. She actually uh, personally had an experience. So Anne Frank was born in 1929 um, and died in 1945. And this book is her own writings of her diary. And of course, when she was writing the diary or the journal, she had no idea that would one day be sold and read by millions of people and inspired millions of people and reveal much about her experiences as a Jew in Amsterdam. So here's a photo of Anne Frank as a teen. So Anne Frank lived with her family in Holland at the time that the Nazis took over Holland and when the Holocaust began in 1940. You can see here troops rounding up Jews in Holland. And for Jews in Holland, it was a very difficult time. 107,000 Jews were rounded up by the Nazis and their sympathizers, and almost all of them did not. Almost all of them died and did not survive the war. But this was what was going on in Holland when Anne Frank was a young teen. Another picture of Jews being rounded up by the Nazis as part of the extermination plan of the Holocaust. You see Jews being rounded up wearing the yellow star, which was another bizarre thing the Nazis made. The Jews wear yellow stars or gold stars, and to make them identifiable to troops or Gestapo or any other Nazis. And they had, if they were caught not wearing these stars, they would be shot on the spot. Here's a picture. This is a picture of Anne Frank's family, obviously before the roundup. Another a picture of her as a young girl. So you have the Frank family, Otto Frank, the father, Edith, the mother, Anne and her sister, Margot. And these pictures were probably taken shortly before the roundup occurred. Okay, so what is the story of Anne Frank? The diary was. Let me explain the story to you. So Anne Frank hid in an attic for a long time, over a year, and stayed in the attic and hid out from the Nazis, with help from people who were um, not Jews but living in the store underneath, and they allowed them to hide in the attic while the Nazis rounded up tens of thousands of Jews and sent them off to die. So this movie and the book is about that experience when they were hiding in the attic, and it was very difficult. She wrote the diary day after day of her experiences, and then this movie was based on those experiences. The Diary of Anne Frank. In fact, the film was later, after the war, actually filmed in the attic that she had hidden in, her family had hidden in all those years. So this is a quote from her diary, which she kept. And if you ever read the diary, I think it's really worth reading. It's one of my favorite books about World War II and the Holocaust because you really get to see what life was like for this one family. And she was very positive, relentlessly so. She wrote, in spite of everything, I still believe the people are really good at heart. So she hid with her family and survived most of the war until uh, she even wrote of how she heard on radio that D-Day had begun. She wrote of the liberation of France and with hope that she would be saved. But unfortunately, the Nazis broke into and found the secret cellar that they had lived in and arrested the family, sent them off to concentration camps. And she ended up dying in the camp of typhus. Okay, so to summarize it, she lived with her family, hiding out through much of World War II, and was captured. Her family lived in this tight space in the attic, hidden uh, to avoid being sent off to the concentration camps. But in the end, they were captured and sent to the camps, and the only survivor from the family was the father. So the father went back after the war, and surprisingly, being the oldest of the group, he was the one that survived. He went back to the attic and just to like as a memory when the war was over, and he found her diary laying on the floor amidst a bunch of garbage still there in the attic. He picked up the book and eventually brought it to a publisher, and it was published in dozens of different languages and then made into a movie, and her story became one of the most moving of the Holocaust and of World War II. And there's a picture of her father. And now it's a museum where they lived in the attic. So that's the story of Anne Frank.